The Korean language isn't a language isolate. It's part of a small language family called Koreanic, which today only has two members, Korean and Jeju, spoken on the island to the south of Korea. Jeju and Korean are not mutually intelligible, they're totally distinct languages, even though they are related, and Jeju is also critically endangered. Historically, there were more languages in the Koreanic family, so each of the three kingdoms of Korea probably spoke a different Koreanic language, although we're not really sure because we don't have a ton of evidence about those other languages, but that would be Shilla, Baekje, and Goguryeo. And Baekje and Goguryeo are the ones that are not well attested, but Shilla is the origin of modern Korean. All of the modern Korean dialects descend from Shilla. That language that was spoken in the Shilla kingdom is what's called Old Korean. Now, we don't have written evidence of Old Korean until about the 500s, but we know that it was probably spoken as far back as the 1st century BCE. It's also kind of hard to tell exactly when Old Korean started being written, because the first evidence of written Korean is actually Chinese writing that shows evidence of influence from Korean, so it has like the wrong word order for Chinese, for example. This Imsin Bao stone is an example of that. It's written in Chinese, but it has subtle influences from what was probably Old Korean. It wasn't until the 500s that we start seeing actual written Korean using Chinese characters, like for example these mokgan strips. Scribes often wrote on these little strips of wood, often to record like economic transactions and inventories. Even though there are only a few languages in the Koreanic language family, we can actually reconstruct what Proto-Koreanic would have looked like, and it goes back even further than Old Korean. We can do that by comparing the living languages and using that evidence to reconstruct the earlier languages, and we can take evidence from Old Korean itself and look at some internal changes that happen in the language and kind of wind the clock back on those, and get a good approximation of what the language might have been like a few hundred years earlier than that as well. But nonetheless, Koreanic is what we call a shallow language family. You can't reconstruct it very far back in history. This is unlike Proto-Indo-European, which we can reconstruct back 7,000 years. There have been a lot of proposals of relationships to the Koreanic language family, so it's been proposed that it's related to Japanese, for example, but none of those proposals are widely accepted. They're kind of fringe theorists. We still consider the Koreanic language family to be an isolate, shallow language family.